Hey guys, we're going to start these review videos back up again. I'm going to try to stay on top of it. So that's my goal. But let's get into Unit 5. We're talking about cognition. Okay, so this is everything about how we learn, how we forget, like how you remember. This is all about memory, okay, and different ways to help improve your memory. We'll get into problem solving, creativity, acquisition of language. So there's a bunch of different things going on in this unit. So this is the first video. We're going to go through a few things. We're not going to go over everything, but we'll go through a few. All right, so first, let's go look at how we are going to study memory and how we start to encode or process memories. Like, how do we record them so that we can remember them later? All right, so what is memory? Okay, basically memory is the acquisition of information, how we store that information, and then how we're able to retrieve it later. Okay, so all of that goes into memory. And so part of memory is figuring out how learning persists. Okay, and so there's different retention measures you can look at when we study memory. Okay, so you have recall, which is retrieving information that's not in your conscious awareness. Okay, it's not in your conscious awareness, but it is there. So like a fill in the blank question on a test, that's recall. Okay, you're not really like consciously thinking about it, you just know the answer. Okay, recognition, like in regards to what you know. Okay, if you're looking at memories and like all the information that you have stored in your brain, recognition is being able to identify items that you've already learned. Okay, so stuff that you've learned previously, like looking at a multiple choice question on a test. Okay, that has to do with recognition. Then you have relearning. Okay, relearning doesn't mean that you didn't learn it the first time. It means that you are going back over the information. So it's learning something more quickly the second time. So if you study for a test, you've already learned the information. You're just kind of going back over it and re-looking at it and relearning it. Okay, that doesn't, like I said, it doesn't mean you didn't learn it the first time. It just means that you're improving your memory the second time you go through and study it. All right, so in order to get things into your memory, okay? So how you create memory models that help you think about how your brain puts in information and how it retrieves information. Okay, so this is basically our information processing model. Okay, that's what this is. Let me hold on. Okay, so our info processing model. Okay, and there's 3 parts. Okay, so there's encoding, storage, and retrieval. These are our 3 processes of memory. So what encoding is, that's getting all the information into your memory. Storage is saving the information over a period of time. And then retrieval is getting that information out of your memory. Okay, so encoding, storing, retrieval. Make sure that you can know the difference between those. All right. So to explain how our memories form, okay. Oh, look, I had that down. I'm looking at my notes and I jumped ahead of myself. Okay, so to explain how your memory works, Richard Atkinson and Richard Schifrin, okay, proposed the 3-stage model of memory. You can't. Oh, look, now you can see it. I'm not going to touch it. Okay, so you have the 3-stage model, okay, and that's, you have your sensory memory, short-term memory, and long-term memory, okay. Sensory memory is the brief initial encoding of sensory information, and I'll talk more about that here in a little bit, but there's 2 kinds of sensory memory. There's iconic and echoic, and they're just like what they sound. Iconic is visual, echoic is auditory. Okay, then short term. So your short-term memory, which is what you're all pretty familiar with, okay, that's limited to about 7 pieces of information. Okay, so 7 items plus or minus 2, it just depends. And this is your active temporary memory. So this is where all the information that you encode, okay, this is where it's processed. And then while it's being processed, your brain has to determine whether or not it's going to be stored there permanently, or do you really not need to know this and then it's totally forgotten. Okay, short-term memory you'll also see referred to as working memory, right? So basically it's like your brain's like a little notepad where you're processing all the information, and that's how you're going to make the decisions, because it's actively working to decide what to store or what to forget. And then long-term memory, okay, this is your relatively permanent and limitless information repository. This is where you keep things like knowledge, skills, experience. Once it's in long-term memory, it's there forever. It's just a matter of you being able to recall or retrieve the information, but it's there. It's never going away. Click. Okay, so let's talk about encoding. So how do we get this information actually into our memory? Okay, so there's a couple things. So while your brain is processing all of this information, it's engaging in what's known as parallel processing. And this is processing different things simultaneously. So you're consciously processing information, you're unconsciously processing information too, okay? So when we process things, okay, it's either going to be effortful processing or automatic processing. Okay, so there's 2 types of processing. That's why it's also known as dual track memory. You're doing one or the other. Okay, so effortful processing, like I said, which is part of this dual track thing, is encoding that requires attention and conscious effort. So you are consciously thinking about what it is that you're processing. Okay, and then the other part of dual track processing is automatic. This is where you're unconsciously encoding information into your brain and into your memory storage. All right, so as we are encoding all of this stuff, you have 2 different types of memories, okay? You have explicit memories and implicit memories. Okay, explicit memories are part of effortful processing, like those 2 go together. And what explicit memories are, they're also known as declarative memories. Okay, so this is retention of facts and experiences. It's going to involve general knowledge, and this is stuff that has to be consciously recalled. Okay, so you actually have to think about it. Okay, so these are your conscious memories of facts or events. And the part of your brain that's responsible for explicit memories is going to be your hippocampus. Okay, explicit memories also deal with sensory memories, which I just mentioned a little while ago, right? Which these are your iconic and echoic. And your implicit memories have to deal with automatic processing. Okay, so this is like stuff that you're unconsciously doing. So what implicit memories are, it's basically you're remembering skills that you've learned or classically conditioned association. So this is stuff that it's there, you're not thinking about it. Okay, this is independent of your conscious recollection. So this would be like procedural information, motor skills. Like when you write, like you know how to write, you unconsciously are recalling that information. It's also known as non-declarative, okay? And this takes place in your cerebellum. All right, so now that you have all of this stuff encoded and it's there, how do we process the information? Okay, so what are some strategies that you can use to boost your ability to form new memories, and then ways that you can remember them later? Okay, so we have chunking. Okay, so the first one is chunking. And that's basically you take information and organize it into meaningful different units. So it's ways that you remember a phone number. You don't just remember 7 random digits, you put them in little groups. I'll give you an example. I went to the store the other day to pick up something and I had to show them my driver's license. And she had to go look at my driver's license number and write it down. Well, I memorize it as a string of digits because that's how I learned to memorize and know my driver's license number. She took it in 2 different chunks. So she put 4 numbers together, and that way she was able to remember it and write it down. Okay. Because like I said, your short-term memory is only 7 items of information. So it stays in there long enough for you to recall it and then write it down. Okay. Mnemonics are memory aids that use vivid imagery. You use this a lot in school. Roy G. Biv, PEMDAS, okay, all that good stuff that's helped you remember information, okay. You also have hierarchies, which is where you organize information into categories. So you start off with these really broad concepts, and then you keep dividing and subdividing. It's like an outline of information. You can also practice what's called rehearsal to help process information, where that's you just keep repeating it over and over and over and over again, and then that helps with encoding. You also have distributed practice. This is more of like a spacing effect. This is for really long-term memory and retention and recollection of information. So if you're taking the AP test, okay? So let's say you start reviewing now, okay? Then you study tomorrow. Okay, like you pick one topic and then you look at it today, you look at it tomorrow, you look at it again in 10 days, you look at it again in a month, you look at it again in 6 months. So you're spacing out your practice with whatever it is that you're trying to encode into your brain. Okay. You also have different levels of processing. Like, so how much do you process the information that you're actually trying to encode? So you have deep processing and shallow processing. Okay, deep processing is where, like, if you have this fact and you want to know all about this fact, so like you go and study the context and you research the reasons behind this fact and why it is what it is. Shallow levels of processing are, what you typically do with most information. It's base level. You basically repeat a fact several times and then you write it down on a test. You didn't process it. You didn't learn it. You just kind of had it there for the time being. Okay. So that's the basis of how we start to study memory, how we go through and encode information. And next we'll look at actually how the information is stored in your brain and then how we can actually go through and then retrieve that information.